Lyra Voss adjusted the sleek, midnight blue bodysuit hugging her form, its texture shimmering faintly under the synthetic glow of Zero Station's polished corridor lights. Her sapphire skin gleamed, flawless, and her dark hair, streaked with silver, spilled over one shoulder like liquid moonlight. Every detail of her appearance had been calculated for effect, and she wasn't about to leave anything to chance. She glanced at her reflection in a mirrored service panel. Flawless. Just as planned. Agent Voss, came the firm voice of Director Kalen Drake through her earpiece. The target's shuttle has docked. Bay 19. Proceed. He must not leave this station with the intel. Understood, Lyra said coolly. I'll handle it. Drake didn't respond. He never did once the order was given. The target, Captain Elias Trent. A human military intelligence officer posing as a diplomatic envoy. He'd arrived under the pretense of a peace summit between the Etherian Coalition and the Human Systems Union. But intelligence had flagged him. Too many encrypted transmissions, too many inconsistencies in his file. If he carried what they suspected, it could expose a web of biological experiments authorized in the Coalition's darkest corners. And it was Lyra's job to stop that. She moved through the station's opulent central promenade, a far cry from the grim facilities she usually worked in. This place catered to politicians, ambassadors, and elite travelers. There were fountains that danced midair, gardens suspended in zero-G, and light displays mimicking distant galaxies. It all felt like a lie. Lyra entered the Emberlight Lounge, where her target would soon appear. It was Zero's crown jewel, a circular chamber with crystalline walls overlooking a nebula that shimmered like fire. She spotted him immediately. Alone at the bar. Just like her briefing had predicted. Tall. Strong build. Tousled brown hair. A sharp jawline and a uniform that didn't quite look ceremonial. He sipped something pale gold, his eyes scanning the crowd behind a calm exterior. Time to play my part, Lyra murmured to herself and crossed the floor, hips swaying with intention. She slid into the seat beside him and flashed a coy smile. New face. Let me guess, first time on Zero? Elias turned to her, his pale gray eyes narrowing slightly in surprise. That obvious? Only a little. Lyra tilted her glass toward him as the bartender arrived. Let me buy your next drink, Captain Trent. He paused, then smiled. I'm not one to argue with generosity. Their glasses clinked. To encounters that leave an impression, she purred. To whatever comes next, Elias replied. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, an intricate dance of flirtation and subtle probing. Lyra had perfected this act long ago, charming, attentive, alluring. She asked him about his travels, his assignment, where he was staying on the station. Elias gave just enough to seem open, but Lyra noted the way he constantly glanced at the room's reflective surfaces, the way his fingers tapped lightly against the base of his glass, counting rhythms, likely mapping exits. Definitely military. Still, he seemed genuinely drawn to her. She leaned closer, her arm brushing his as she laughed at something he said. Her voice was soft, melodic, practiced. But under the surface, her mind was moving quickly, analyzing everything. When his hand brushed hers in return, she didn't pull away. You're not like the others, Elias remarked, studying her. Most people around here are all business. You feel different. Lyra tilted her head with a smile. That's because I'm not from around here. I gathered that, he said, gesturing subtly to her blue skin. You're Etherian? Half, she replied smoothly. The rest is classified. Elias laughed. I suppose I walked into that one. As the night wore on, the ember lights lighting dimmed to simulate twilight, and the lounge slowly emptied of its earlier crowd. They were alone now, or nearly so. Elias had relaxed, sipping slowly from his drink, and Lyra leaned in close, her voice barely above a whisper. There's a private viewing deck above the east wing, she said, her lips near his ear. Stunning view of the Varelian cluster. It's quiet. Isolated. Perfect for diplomatic talks. Elias raised an eyebrow. Is that your idea of diplomacy? Only with the right people. He stood and extended a hand. Lead the way. Lyra's heart beat faster, though not from nerves. She'd done this before countless times. But something about this mission felt different. She couldn't quite place why. Maybe it was the way Elias looked at her, like he wasn't fooled by the act, but liked her anyway. The deck was indeed private. A glass dome stretched overhead, revealing a kaleidoscope of stars. Soft light bathed the space in hues of purple and silver. As the door sealed behind them, Elias turned to her. You have a way of making people forget where they are, he said. That's the idea. She reached up, cupping his face in her hands, and kissed him, slowly at first, then with mounting urgency. He responded in kind, his arms wrapping around her as they melted into each other. Somewhere in the back of her mind, Lyra reminded herself this was still a mission. But it was getting harder to remember why. The kiss deepened, fiery and intense, their bodies drawn together like gravitational pull. Elias's fingers found the zipper at the back of her suit, his touch both gentle and confident. Lyra didn't stop him. She didn't hesitate. She let the moment carry them to the soft lounge couch tucked beneath the stars. Clothing fell away. Skin met skin. Her breath caught as his mouth brushed her collarbone. The heat of his body against hers, the strength in his arms, the way he responded to every movement, it ignited something primal, something she had trained her whole life to suppress. But not tonight. What began as seduction became something else entirely. Later, as they lay together wrapped in tangled sheets and the fading warmth of their union, Lyra stared up at the stars overhead. She felt his arm draped across her waist, heard the slow, rhythmic cadence of his breathing. She slid out of bed silently, her body still humming with sensation. The safe embedded in her boot clicked open at her touch. She retrieved the slender, scanning device tucked within and turned toward the scattered clothing on the floor. Quickly, expertly, she passed the device over his uniform, collecting data from the embedded chips, communications logs, encrypted messages. She tapped a button. Transmission to Etherian intelligence initiated. But her hand paused over the device. For the first time, doubt crept in. It was supposed to be just another mission, lure the target, extract the data, disappear. But now, lying mere feet away, was a man who had trusted her, touched her, looked at her like she was more than a tool. She took a single hair from his discarded shirt and placed it into the small DNA sampler. Another layer of insurance. Another betrayal. Her fingers lingered over the transmission key again. Then she pressed it. The data vanished into encrypted channels. Job done. She returned the scanner to the safe, closed it, and slipped back into bed beside Elias. He stirred slightly but didn't wake. Lyra stared at the stars through the dome above. They looked different now, cold, distant. She whispered to herself, "It's just a mission." But for the first time in her career, she wasn't sure if that was true. Lyra awoke to the gentle hum of the deck's environmental regulators. Artificial gravity held firm beneath her, and soft light filtered through the curved dome above. Her body ached pleasantly from the night before, and for a moment, everything felt still. Then she reached for Elias. Her hand found only empty sheets. She sat up, the satin blanket falling away from her chest. The deck was quiet. Too quiet. A door hissed open. Elias stepped through, bare-chested, towel wrapped around his waist, water glistening on his skin from the refresher unit. He smiled when he saw her awake. "Didn't mean to sneak off," he said. "Just needed to rinse off the diplomacy." Lyra chuckled, but it came out thinner than she intended. "You're not required to make jokes about it, you know. I find it helps me process." He moved closer and kissed her forehead, then looked at her with a grin. "Besides, I wasn't about to skip breakfast with the most dangerous woman on the station." "Dangerous?" she teased. "You seduced a human intelligence officer on neutral territory in under an hour." "Yeah, that qualifies." He sat beside her, but as he reached for her hand, Lyra suddenly stiffened. A jolt of dizziness surged through her skull. The world tilted, the dome's glass warping as if under heat. She blinked, clutching the edge of the bed. Elias caught her. Lyra? Hey! What's wrong? I don't know, she whispered. Sweat prickled at her brow. Her skin felt too tight. Her limbs, like someone else's. When she glanced down at her arm, her breath caught. Small, dark swirls, discolored patches like oil stains, were blooming across her blue skin. Irregular. Jagged. Gods, she muttered. No, no. Elias leaned forward, his concern shifting into urgency. What is that? They weren't there last night, she murmured. Not before we. She didn't finish. Elias turned her wrist over, inspecting it. Other symptoms? Dizzy. Nauseated. And I feel wrong. Not sick. Twisted. His expression grew grim. We need to get you to the medical bay. No, she snapped, then softened. We can't. If they see this, if they trace it back to you. You think I did this to you? Elias asked, his voice low. No, she said quickly. I think this might be something worse. Something ancient. She swallowed hard. There are stories. Arthurian myths. From the first days of contact with humans. About a sickness, spread through intimacy. His eyes widened. You're saying this is some kind of interspecies infection? I don't know, Lyra admitted. They say it hasn't happened in centuries. That it was more legend than science. But I'm starting to think, maybe it's real. Elias didn't waste time. He stood and began pulling on his uniform, urgency stiffening every movement. We're not risking your life over myths or politics. There has to be someone on this station who can help. Lyra gritted her teeth as another wave of nausea rolled through her. We can't go to the main medical center. If Director Drake finds out. Forget Drake, Elias said firmly, strapping his gear into place. I know someone. Dr. Helix. He's eccentric, paranoid, and has more degrees than he does social graces, but he's discreet. Lyra hesitated, then nodded. Help me get dressed. Elias moved to her side and gently helped her into her bodysuit. Even that simple task made her wince. Her skin was growing more sensitive by the second, the patches spreading across her sides, crawling like an invasive bloom. As they made their way through the corridors of Zerl Station, Elias kept one arm around her waist, supporting her weight as she faltered. The normally bustling passageways had thinned with the night cycle, which worked in their favor. Few would notice the human captain helping a beautiful woman who now looked far less healthy than she had hours before. They reached a nondescript maintenance hatch near the lower engineering wing. Elias keyed in a code, and the wall panel slid open to reveal a dim, cluttered lab that smelled faintly of antiseptic and burning plasma coils. Inside, a wiry, pale-skinned alien hunched over a cluster of humming machines. 4 mechanical arms sprouted from a rig mounted to his back, each tipped with different tools. He looked up as they entered, his dark eyes narrowing behind tinted lenses. Captain Trent, the doctor said with a raised brow. You've brought me a corpse? Not yet, Elias said grimly. She needs help, Helix. Something ancient. Something interspecies. Fast-acting. Dr. Arvin Helix scuttled over and examined Lyra with surprising gentleness. His hands moved in practiced precision, scanning her skin, eyes, and vitals. His expression darkened. This isn't any disease I've catalogued in the last 5 decades, he muttered. But the biomarker's fascinating. It's targeting her cellular matrix, splicing genetic strands, rewriting protein structures. Can you stop it? Elias asked. Helix paused. Maybe. But I need time. And samples. Blood. Skin. Possibly marrow. Lyra leaned back against Elias, her breath labored. Do whatever it takes. The doctor hesitated, then activated his scanners. I'll begin immediately. But you should both prepare yourselves. If this is what I think it is, you're part of something much larger. Dr. Helix moved with unnerving speed. His secondary arms buzzed and clicked, inserting needles, extracting tissue samples, running them through compact processors that whirred and glowed. Lyra lay on a reclining exam table in the corner of his lab, her breathing shallow, face slick with sweat. Elias sat beside her, never letting go of her hand. Helix muttered to himself in alien dialects, occasionally cursing under his breath. After what felt like an hour, he turned to them, his face unreadable. "I've confirmed the presence of an ancient pathogen embedded in her cellular layers," he said. "It's a strand I've only seen once before, in forbidden archives. Something the Coalition erased from public medical history." Lyra's eyes fluttered open. "Then it's true." Helix nodded grimly. "The condition is real. The old name for it, Ziritha's fever. The story went that during early human-Etherian encounters, close contact between the species triggered a violent biological reaction. A kind of genetic immune rejection. It's like her body is rejecting me," Elias said quietly. "Not you," Helix corrected. "Your biology. Specifically, compounds in your blood that Etherians weren't evolved to process. During intimate contact, those compounds transfer, directly. The pathogen isn't viral. It's reactive." Lyra looked up at the ceiling, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is there a cure?" "Historically, the fever was suppressed using an antibody found only in first-generation human marrow," Helix said. "But the process was primitive. Risky. Nearly always fatal for the human donor." Elias didn't hesitate. "Then take it from me." "No," Lyra croaked, reaching for his arm. "You don't understand. I didn't meet you by accident. This was a mission. I used you." Elias didn't flinch. "I know." Her eyes widened in surprise. "I knew you were a plant the moment you approached me in the lounge," he said. "Your smile was too perfect. Your touch too calculated. But then, I stopped caring." She turned her face away, ashamed. "I transmitted everything. Your data. I completed my mission. And you're still here," he said. "Risking everything to live. That tells me what we had wasn't all fake." Helix cleared his throat. "Touching. But we're running out of time. Her vitals are dropping. Fast." "Then take what you need," Elias said, already rolling up his sleeve. "And if I don't make it—" "You will," Lyra interrupted, her voice weak but steady. "You have to." Their fingers intertwined. In that sterile, dimly lit lab, a spy and a soldier held each other as if clinging to life itself. And in that moment they were. Dr. Helix moved quickly now, his clinical detachment replaced with something more urgent. He brought over a tall, slender machine, something old and modified, patched with parts from at least 3 different eras of technology. Its core chamber opened like a maw, gleaming with sterilized steel. "This device," Helix explained, "is designed to extract concentrated marrow cells and plasma. We'll filter for the specific antibody strands needed to synthesize a counteragent to the fever." Elias gripped Lyra's hand. "How long will it take?" "Too long," Helix muttered. "But we'll go as fast as her body will allow. She has maybe 6 hours before her organs begin shutting down. Less if her nervous system destabilizes." Lyra gave Elias a shaky smile. "Still time to change your mind, Captain." He leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers. "Not a chance." The procedure began. Elias was secured into the extractor's reclined seat. Thin needles slipped into both arms and into his back, targeting the spine. The first puncture sent a jolt of pain up his nerves, but he gritted his teeth. Lyra watched from the nearby cot, unable to look away. The machine whirred to life, its central chamber glowing blue as it filtered the extracted marrow, isolating the rare antibodies responsible for neutralizing the fever's cellular effects. Elias winced, his hands clenching the armrests. Lyra turned to Helix. "Is it working?" The doctor nodded slowly. "It is. His body is producing the exact antibodies we need. But the stress on his system is intense. He's losing strength rapidly." Lyra's heart clenched. Then we do this fast. Minutes stretched like hours. Elias's breathing grew shallow, his face pale. Sweat glistened on his forehead. His body twitched under the pressure, but he never cried out. Lyra stood staggering, her legs barely holding her up. She crossed the space between them, ignoring the dark splotches still blooming on her arms. "Look at me," she whispered. His eyes opened weakly. "Still here. You're saving me," she whispered, her voice thick. "After everything, you're still saving me. You were worth the risk," Elias murmured. Helix pulled a vial from the extractor, its contents glowing faint blue. "This is it. The first dose of the serum. If it stabilizes her cells, we can begin a full synthesis." Lyra nodded, gripping Elias's hand. "Do it." The injection burned like liquid fire as it entered her veins. She cried out, arching back, her body shaking violently. Elias tried to rise from the chair but collapsed back, breathless. "Vitals are spiking," Helix called. Wait. The monitors leveled out. The dark patches on Lyra's arms stopped growing. Her breathing steadied. Helix exhaled in relief. "It's working." Elias slumped forward, nearly unconscious. Lyra dropped to her knees beside him, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Stay with me," she begged. His hand found hers, weak but warm. "I'm not going anywhere," he whispered. The next 3 hours passed in a haze of tension. Dr. Helix worked like a man possessed, using Elias's extracted antibodies to synthesize a complete version of the cure. He refused assistance, muttering equations and recalculating dosages while his mechanical limbs blended chemical agents with inhuman precision. Meanwhile, Lyra stayed by Elias's side, her body slowly healing. The angry black patterns had begun to recede, the fever cooling. The fire in her muscles dulled to a manageable ache, and color was returning to her sapphire skin. Elias, however, remained in and out of consciousness. The marrow extraction had taken a toll, his strength sapped, his skin pallid. Helix finally emerged from his lab corner with a vial held high. "This is the full cure," he declared. "Stabilized, synthesized, and perfectly matched to her blood profile. It should eliminate every trace of the infection." Lyra stood. "You already gave me a dose." "That was a test," Helix said. "A fragment. Enough to confirm compatibility. This will ensure total eradication." He administered the serum, and Lyra closed her eyes as it entered her bloodstream. For the first time since the symptoms began, she felt like herself. Strong. Whole. She flexed her fingers. "It's gone," she said softly. "I can feel it." Elias let out a weak laugh. "Told you we'd make it." She knelt beside him and pressed a kiss to his brow. "You should be resting. Hard to rest when a woman you barely know injects herself with your bone marrow." "There," she murmured. But the moment of relief was short-lived. A sudden beep echoed through the lab, and Helix rushed to his console. His expression twisted. "They found us," he said. Lyra stood sharply. "Who?" Helix tapped the display. "Drake's agents. 3 security shuttles just dropped out of FTL and docked at the service ring. They're storming the station." Lyra's jaw clenched. "They know I'm here. They probably know about Elias too." Helix looked between them. "You need to run. I've got a back access corridor through the maintenance ducts. It leads to docking bay 11. There's a freighter captain there. She owes me a favor." Lyra helped Elias to his feet. "Can you walk?" "Barely. But I'll manage." Helix grabbed a med pack and slapped it into Elias's chest. "That'll keep you upright." Before they could move, an explosion shook the floor. The lights flickered. "They're not knocking," Helix growled. Lyra's voice turned cold. "Then we don't run. We fight our way out." Elias gave her a faint grin. "Now that's the woman I remember." Helix opened the rear hatch. "Go. I'll cover your exit." As they disappeared into the shadows of the maintenance corridor, the first blaster bolts rang out behind them. The mission had ended. The war was just beginning. The maintenance corridors were narrow and dim, lit only by flickering backup lights that cast moving shadows across the walls. The emergency sirens had not reached this sector of the station yet, but the low thrum of approaching buffaws echoed through the walls like a heartbeat. Lyra led the way, her steps quiet and calculated, her blaster drawn. Elias followed behind, his movements sluggish but improving with every dose from the med pack strapped to his chest. "You're sure Helix's contact is at Docking Bay 11? Elias asked, his voice hushed. "She'll be there," Lyra said. "Solon Myra doesn't exactly follow rules, but she never breaks a debt. And she owes Helix more than one." They passed a junction where 3 corridors met. Lyra raised a hand, signaling Elias to stop. She pressed her ear to the wall. Faint voices, soldiers. Coalition security. "They're sweeping east," she whispered. "If we stay low, we can reach the hatch before they circle back." They moved faster, Elias keeping pace despite the fatigue dragging at his limbs. Every step pushed him, but he wouldn't falter, not now, not after everything he and Lyra had survived. Docking Bay 11 loomed ahead, a towering bulkhead sealed tight with a red warning panel blinking across its face. Lyra reached for the control panel. "Access code, come on!" Before she could finish, a muffled voice crackled over her comm, one she recognized instantly. "Agent Voss," came Director Kalen Drake's voice. Smooth. Cold. Cruel. "Your little escapade has caused quite a disruption." Lyra stiffened. "Drop the human. Return to intelligence. And I may consider sparing you. If you run, there will be nowhere to hide. We both know how this ends." Elias stepped forward, defiant despite his exhaustion. "Do all your messages come with threats, or is this a special occasion?" Kalen laughed darkly. "You misunderstand, Captain Trent. I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to clean up a mistake." Lyra's fingers danced over the keypad. The bulkhead hissed open. A woman stood on the freighter ramp, blaster on her hip, eyebrow arched. "Solon Myra," Lyra said. "We need to leave. Now." Solon looked them over once. "Get on." Behind them, the corridor lit up with the telltale flash of boots rounding the corner. Blaster fire erupted. Elias grabbed Lyra and dove through the hatch as Solon slammed the door shut behind them. A heartbeat later, the ship's engines roared to life. "We're not out yet," Solon warned as they buckled in. "We've got about 90 seconds before the blockade closes." Lyra turned to Elias, her eyes fierce. "Then let's break through it." Solon Myra's freighter, the Wayfarer, was nothing short of a smuggler's dream. Compact, armored, and overpowered for its class, it had seen its share of illegal runs through quarantine zones, black site systems, and planetary sieges. But even Solon had to admit, charging headfirst into a coalition security blockade with 2 fugitives aboard might be pushing her luck. The ship trembled as it launched from Docking Bay 11. Through the forward viewport, Lyra and Elias saw Zero Station falling behind them, its gleaming spires now swarming with security vessels. 2 gunships peeled off from the blockade perimeter, their targeting systems locking on. "They're not warning us," Solon muttered, hands tight on the control yoke. "They're just firing." Blaster fire streaked toward them. Lyra dropped into the co-pilot's chair and activated the countermeasures. "Deploying flares. Sending false sensor signatures. Let's hope they're as lazy as their reputation suggests." Elias staggered into a third seat behind them, still pale but recovering, gripping the side rail as the freighter banked hard to avoid a blast that lit the darkness just off their nose. "Can we outrun them?" he asked, holding his breath. "Not a chance," Solon replied. "But we can outthink them." She tapped into a nearby NAV system, her fingers flying over the display. "There's a plasma storm forming in the lower quadrant of the sector. No sane pilot would go near it." "That's our ticket, isn't it?" Lyra said, eyes narrowing. Solon grinned. "You catch on quick." The ship plunged toward the storm's coordinates, its hull creaking as gravitational distortions pulled at the stabilizers. Behind them, the two gunships hesitated. Coalition protocol prohibited entry into ion-rich nebula storms without backup. But then, they broke protocol. They're following, Elias said grimly. Drake wants us that bad? Solon muttered. Not just us, Lyra said. He wants the fever. Proof it still exists. My infected DNA. Elias's antibodies. If he gets either, he can build the weapon he's always dreamed of. Solon looked at her. Then I suggest you hold on. I'm about to do something incredibly stupid. She cut the ship's engines and let the gravitational tide of the plasma storm pull them inward. The vessel tumbled, caught in a violent wave of blue light and electric arcs that danced across the shields. The pursuing gunships hesitated again, but too late. They were caught in the same pull. Solon slammed the emergency thrusters, flipped the ship in a barrel roll, and spun them through a narrow current of magnetic energy. The sudden shift propelled the Wayfarer sideways, out of the storm's gravity, into a hidden corridor of space behind the dense clouds. The gunships weren't so lucky. A bolt of plasma arced into their path, slicing through one and crippling the other. Blockade broken, Solon announced. Lyra exhaled. You're insane. Maybe, Solon said. But I get results. Elias let his head fall back with a weak laugh. I think I'm in love with both of you. Lyra turned in her seat and smiled, genuine, unguarded. We're not safe yet, she said, voice low. But we just bought ourselves a fighting chance. The storm receded behind them, leaving the Wayfarer adrift in a pocket of calm space, a dead zone between sectors used mostly by smugglers and fugitives. No calm traffic. No patrols. Just silence and starlight. Solon set the ship to low-power cruise, then leaned back and lit a cigarette from a holder etched with old trade sigils. We've got a few hours before anyone picks up our trail. Time enough to decide where you two want to run next. We're not running, Lyra said. Not forever. Elias, seated on a bench along the wall, looked up. You have an idea? Lyra hesitated. Drake won't stop. As long as he believes the fever exists, and that we're alive, he'll hunt us. He'll want to control it. Use it. Which means we have to end it. How? Solon asked. You gonna march back into Zeril and punch him in the mouth? No, Lyra said, her voice cold. I'm going to expose him. Solon raised a brow. You want to leak intelligence about your own boss? He's not just my boss anymore, Lyra replied. He's a threat to every species in the sector. If we can prove what he's doing, his black site research, his plans to revive Ziritha's fever as a bioweapon, then the Coalition Council will have to act. Elias nodded slowly. Pax's files. Dr. Halix mentioned forbidden archives, records of the original outbreaks. That data still exists somewhere. If we get it, and we show what Drake is trying to do with it, we make him radioactive, Lyra finished. Untouchable. Solon frowned. That's a lot of ifs. Even if you get the data, you'll need a safe channel to transmit it. Somewhere Drake doesn't have reach. Elias sat forward. There's a station on the edge of the Helix Rift. Independent. Old Republic tech. They maintain a relay that pings directly to the Council's neutral archives. Drake can't touch it without violating a dozen treaties. Coordinates? Solon asked. I'll input them myself, Elias said. Lyra looked between them. If we do this, there's no turning back. He'll know we've declared war. I thought we already had, Elias replied. Solon took a long drag from her cigarette, then blew the smoke toward the ceiling. Guess I'm in, then. Always wanted to be part of a righteous suicide mission. Lyra turned to Elias. Are you sure? He looked into her eyes, sapphire meeting storm gray. I didn't come here for war, he said. But I'm staying for you. She blinked, caught off guard by the honesty in his voice. Then let's finish what we started, she whispered. And in that quiet moment aboard the Wayfarer, the path forward became clear. No more running. They were going to burn Drake's empire to the ground. The Wayfarer emerged from hyperspace with a shimmer of blue light, its hull groaning as it adjusted to subspace drift. Ahead, floating in the darkness like a monument forgotten by time, was Station N9, known only to a few as the Ghost Archive. Once a deep space research relay for the Old Republic, the station had long since been decommissioned, officially. In reality, it had been repurposed by the Interstellar Council as a backup data relay for high-clearance intelligence and restricted broadcasts. Its systems operated on quantum encryption from a lost era. Untouchable, even by Drake's elite surveillance teams. "Place looks haunted," Solon muttered as she slowed the ship's approach. "It's secure," Elias replied, eyes fixed on the looming station. "It's the only place left where we can make our move." Lyra felt tension settle over her shoulders like a cloak. The fever was gone from her body, but the scars it left weren't only physical. She still remembered the sickness pressing in from all sides, the helplessness, the fear of losing control. And Elias, willing to give his life for her without hesitation. She shook off the thought. There would be time to feel later. "Docking clamps locked," Solon announced. "Power's minimal on their side. You'll need to use emergency hatches." "Should I keep the engines hot?" Lyra nodded. "In case this turns sideways, don't wait for us. Just go." Solon snorted. "I don't bail that easy, sweetheart. But I'll be ready." The hatch opened with a creaking hiss, revealing the dark entry corridor of the station. Elias went first, scanning the way with a shoulder-mounted lamp. Dust drifted through the air like mist, and ancient control panels flickered weakly under backup power. Lyra followed closely behind, her blaster ready. "Are you sure the Council relay still works?" "It's passive," Elias replied. "It won't show any external signals unless activated from inside. That's why Drake hasn't shut it down. He probably thinks no one even remembers it exists." They moved deeper into the station until they reached a sealed chamber marked with faded Republic insignia. Elias pulled out an ancient key drive, one of the few pieces of tech that still interfaced with old Republic systems, and inserted it into the console. The room came to life. Holographic screens flared upward, displaying a spiderweb of data streams. The central terminal pulsed with golden light. "We're in," Elias said. Lyra stepped forward, uploading the encrypted files Helix had given them, details on the original Ziritha's fever outbreak, Drake's experiments, black site research, and the full logs of Pax's murder. The system began auto-transmitting. To 5 council sectors. To 3 neutral science coalitions. To every major medical authority in the quadrant. "This will destroy him," Elias murmured. Lyra looked at the screen, watching Drake's lies unravel in real time. "Good." But her satisfaction faded as a cold realization hit her. If she knew this place existed, Drake might know too. She turned toward Elias. "We need to leave. Now." The Ghost Archive's walls began to tremble. Not from power surges. From an incoming vessel. Solon's voice crackled through Lyra's calm, urgent, clipped. "We've got incoming. Vessels just dropped out of hyperspace. Coalition transponders, but not official ones. They're unmarked." "Drake," Lyra hissed. Elias was already pulling the key drive from the console. "Did the transmission complete?" Lyra checked the screen, an indicator blinked green. "The data's out. All of it. Then we run," he said. "Before we get buried here." An explosion rocked the station. Emergency lights turned red. External pressure dropped in the lower decks. "They're boarding!" Solon shouted. 2 ships docking on the far ring. "I've sealed the bay, but I can't hold them for long. You've got 6 minutes to get back here!" Elias and Lyra ran. The station's corridors, once lifeless and still, now screamed with klaxons. Sparks fell from the ceiling. The walls groaned under the pressure of incoming enemy forces. They reached a maintenance shaft and ducked into the vertical tunnel, climbing as fast as they could toward the main ring. Lyra's limbs ached with the exertion, but her body was fully recovered now, no more fever, no more weakness. But fear still clung to her like a second skin. Drake wasn't here for a rest. He'd come to clean up loose ends. As they neared the upper corridor, Lyra heard footsteps. Heavy. Armored. She signaled Elias to stop and drew her blaster. 3 figures in matte black armor swept past the junction ahead. Coalition elite troopers, Drake's personal kill squad. They're cutting off our path, Elias whispered. I've got a detour, Lyra replied. Follow me. They ducked into an auxiliary service crawlspace that ran beneath the ring corridor. It was tight, dusty, and pitch black save for the faint glow from Elias's belt lamp. Each thud of pursuit boots above them rattled the tunnel. Then came the voice, smooth and amplified through external speakers. Agent Voss. Captain Trent. You've made your point. It was Drake. You've sent your little message. Bravo. You've embarrassed me. But the council is slow, and I am very fast. If you surrender now, I promise a quick end. It's the best offer you'll get. Lyra gritted her teeth. Elias crawled beside her. He sounds too calm. He's already decided we're dead, she replied. He's just being polite about it. They reached the end of the tunnel and dropped into a corridor just 1 deck below the Wayfarer's hangar. Explosions echoed in the distance as Solon tried to hold off Drake's forces with automated turrets. Elias winced as he moved. You sure you can get us through that mess? Lyra recharged her blaster. I'm done hiding. She took his hand and pulled him forward. We fight our way out. The corridor leading to the hangar was already engulfed in chaos. Coalition shock troopers poured in through a breach in the outer hull, their armor shimmering with energy shielding. The station's dim emergency lights flickered, casting long, dancing shadows across the metal walls. Fire hissed from a ruptured power conduit, and the air smelled of ozone and melted steel. Lyra and Elias pressed their backs against the wall at the corridor entrance. They've got numbers, Elias muttered. And we've got 1 working blaster. Lyra popped open a storage panel on the wall and pulled out 2 stun grenades and an old rifle with a chipped barrel. Now we've got more than 1. Elias gave her a sidelong glance. Remind me to break into weapon lockers more often. Solon's voice came through the calm. 3 troopers breached the loading ramp. I'm holding them off, but I can't lift off until you're back on board. Buy us 60 seconds, Lyra said. We're coming in hot. She primed the grenades and counted under her breath. 1, 2, now. They rolled the grenades into the corridor. 2 sharp flashes of blue light erupted, and half the soldiers collapsed, twitching. The rest turned, too late. Lyra sprinted forward, rifle raised, firing at the squad's flanks. Elias moved with her, blaster in hand, picking off stragglers. The hangar entrance loomed ahead, its blast doors partially melted from an earlier skirmish. Smoke poured from the threshold, but through it, they could see the Wayfarer's hull. Another explosion rocked the ground as one of Drake's soldiers tossed the charge. The force knocked Elias to the side. He skidded against the wall and groaned. Lyra dropped to his side. Are you hit? Just bruised ribs, he muttered. Keep going. Not without you. She looped his arm over her shoulder and pulled him to his feet. Blaster fire erupted behind them, and they turned the last corner just as Solon opened the Wayfarer's side ramp. Move! She yelled, firing wildly into the smoke with one hand and jabbing at the controls with the other. Lyra and Elias crossed the threshold seconds before the ramp began to close. A blaster bolt scorched Lyra's calf, but she didn't stop. She dragged Elias through the cargo bay and slammed the emergency lockdown button. The ramp sealed. The ship lurched upward. We're clear! Solon shouted from the cockpit. Hang on! Lyra and Elias collapsed against the crate, gasping for breath. Behind them, the Ghost Archive shrank in the viewport, fires blooming across its hull as Drake's forces tried to regain control. You got it? Solon asked, breathless. Lyra nodded. Everything. All the evidence. It's already on its way to the council. Solon grinned. Then we just made ourselves the most wanted people in the sector. Elias looked up at Lyra, sweat running down his temple. Worth it? She leaned down and kissed him, slow and deep. Every second. The Wayfarer sailed through deep space, far from the Ghost Archive and its burned-out husk. The stars outside were serene, distant, uncaring, unaware of the war that had just begun. In the ship's small medbay, Elias lay on the diagnostic table, his torso bare as the scanner passed over him. Lyra sat nearby, one leg bandaged where the blaster had grazed her calf, watching him closely. You're lucky. The ship's medic drone buzzed as it retracted its instruments. No internal damage. Just cracked ribs and a bruised ego. Ego's mostly intact, Elias said, trying to sit up and failing. Lyra pressed a hand to his chest. Stay down. Rest. He looked at her, really looked, at her sapphire skin, the worry behind her eyes, the smudges of soot still on her cheek from the firefight. You saved me back there, he said softly. We saved each other, Lyra replied. Solon stepped into the room, tossing a calm tablet onto the table between them. Thought you'd want to see this. Lyra picked it up. On the screen, council seals flickered, official broadcasts. Headlines scrolled beneath them. Director Drake under investigation by Coalition Oversight Board. Evidence of illegal bioweapon program surfaces. Ziritha's fever confirmed, ancient plague not a myth. Lyra exhaled. It's real. They're listening. Elias leaned back against the medbed with a sigh. He's cornered. Solon crossed her arms. He's dangerous. And he won't go quietly. You two humiliated one of the most feared men in Coalition intelligence. What do you think happens next? Lyra's jaw tightened. He retaliates. He'll send more kill squads, Solon said. Maybe even try to silence the council. Elias nodded. Then we stay ahead of him. We stay mobile. We keep pressing the truth. Solon scoffed. That sounds like a crusade. It is, Lyra said. Solon sighed and turned for the door. I'll prep the ship. I know a place on the edge of Tau Ceti. No one asks questions, and the drinks are cheap. As she left, silence settled between Lyra and Elias. Then Elias spoke again, voice low. You could have left me. Lyra looked at him. You gave me your blood. You didn't hesitate. I wasn't leaving you behind. He smiled faintly. Still, not the smoothest first mission together. I've had worse, she murmured. Then her voice softened. I've never had one end like this, though. They sat together in the quiet hum of the med bay, the memory of what they'd survived etched into the silence. Enemies behind them. An empire unraveling. The war wasn't over. But for the first time, they weren't fighting alone. The rim world of Caldrus Vega drifted like a dusty marble against the stars, just outside Coalition-controlled territory, and just inside enough to remain a thorn in their side. It was a place of smugglers, exiles, and those too dangerous or too clever to be caught. Exactly the kind of place where people like Lyra and Elias could disappear. The Wayfarer touched down in a private docking cradle surrounded by rusted towers and neon haze. As the engines cooled, Solon powered down all non-essential systems and turned to them from the cockpit. We've got a few days. Maybe a week. No comms, no patrols. If Drake comes looking, he'll find 1,000 other problems before he finds us. Elias stood behind her, ribs still sore but healing. We appreciate it, Solon. She gave him a dry look. I didn't do it for you, soldier boy. I did it because that bastard Drake killed a friend of mine. I just hope you're ready for what comes next. What do you mean? Lyra asked. Solon leaned back, lighting another of her ever-present slim smokes. The council might act against Drake. They might not. But no matter what they do, he's not going to disappear quietly. You exposed him. You humiliated him. That's personal. Lyra nodded grimly. We'll be ready. Later, in a borrowed apartment above the spaceport, modest, with sand-scoured windows and old brass fixtures, Lyra stood at the edge of the balcony, watching the planet's twin suns set over the distant ridge lines. Their orange glow lit her skin, and for a moment she looked almost ethereal. Elias stepped up beside her, handing her a mug of something warm and fragrant. Some kind of local tea. Might be poison. She smirked and took a sip. Not bad. Tastes like regret and hot metal. He chuckled and leaned on the railing beside her. We could stay here. A little while, at least. Let the galaxy turn without us. You think it would? She asked softly. Turn without us? He looked at her. I think it always does. She took another sip, then set the mug down. When I first met you, I wasn't supposed to care. You were a target. A stepping stone. I know, he said. But then I saw you fight for me. Not just the data. Not the mission. Me. I'd never seen that before. Elias reached for her hand. You were never just a mission. They stood together in silence, the sky turning darker above them. For a brief moment, peace settled over them, a fragile, fleeting thing. The eye of a storm yet to come. Then Lyra's calm flickered to life, low and coded. A single phrase displayed on the screen. Drake has disappeared. Her heart clenched. He was no longer under investigation. He was gone. Free. Somewhere. Planning. The coded message repeated once before blinking out. Drake has disappeared. Lyra stared at it in silence. The peaceful stillness of the Caldrus Vega evening shattered like glass in her mind. It wasn't just the implication that Drake was no longer in custody. It was what wasn't said. The council hadn't cleared him. They hadn't detained him either. He'd slipped through. Elias stepped behind her, reading the message over her shoulder. That's not good. No, Lyra said. It's very bad. Where would he go? She turned, pacing the room, her body suddenly alive with the tension she tried to bury. Anywhere. Everywhere. He has black site contacts. Former agents. Even rogue coalition captains who still owe him favors. But what would he do? Elias asked, standing now too. He knows we exposed him. If he runs, he risks staying irrelevant. But if he strikes back, he'll want a victory. She interrupted. A statement. Elias nodded grimly. Which means he'll come for us. Lyra checked her weapon belt, then moved toward the small terminal Solon had hardwired into the apartment's wall. We need to be ready. You just got out of a fever that nearly killed you, Elias reminded her. I just finished coughing up blood 2 days ago. Should we even be thinking about fighting? I'm not thinking about it, Lyra said. I'm preparing for it. Elias exhaled, rubbing his forehead. We can't go after him without leads. Then we don't go after him, she said. We draw him to us. He turned sharply. What? We've heard him, Lyra continued. His pride, his reputation, and his plans. He won't let it stand. But he also won't come at us directly, not while we're still protected by what little attention the Council gives us. He'll send someone first. Elias frowned. An assassin? Lyra's eyes darkened. A message. Across the room, the calm beeped again. Another encrypted alert. From Solon this time. Elias opened the channel. Her voice came through tight and low. You two might want to see this. There's a transport that just docked. Civilian registry, clean. But I know the pilot. She runs for one of Drake's off-grid networks. She's not here for a drink. Lyra and Elias locked eyes. It's starting, she said. Elias stood slowly and reached for his jacket. Then let's welcome the guest. They stepped into the night, side by side, no longer fugitives or spies, but survivors with unfinished business. And someone was about to regret waking the ghosts of Zero Station. The docking bay of Caldrus Vega's outer ring was a jagged, half-lit space with corroded gantries and graffiti-covered crates. A place where ships came to disappear, and deals were done with blasters drawn under the table. Lyra and Elias moved through the shadows, Solon a step behind, her blaster holstered but ready. They kept to the perimeter as the civilian transport loomed ahead, small, nimble, with no obvious weapons. But appearances lied. "She's here," Solon whispered. "I saw her step off 20 minutes ago. Didn't register with port control. Didn't speak to anyone. Just vanished into the crowd." Lyra scanned the area. "That's her style. Her name's Leary Jex. Drake's favorite tool for quiet kills. If she's on this rock, we're the job." Elias tightened his grip on the weapon at his side. "So what's the plan? Wait for her to make a move?" "No," Lyra said. "We flush her out." She stepped away from the shadows and into the open. Solon hissed. "Are you serious? She'll follow if she thinks I'm alone. It's what I do." Elias started to protest, but Lyra shook her head. "You're still healing. Let me do this." Elias hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Stay close to comms." Lyra disappeared into the lower levels of the port, her boots echoing softly on the metal stairs as she descended into the service corridors. The walls narrowed. Lights buzzed and flickered. The deeper she went, the more she could feel the presence, like a pressure building behind her back. Then she stopped. "I know you're here," she said to the empty corridor. Silence. Then a voice, smooth and cold. "I always wondered what would bring you to ground, Lyra Voss. I should have known it'd be love." Leary Jex stepped from the shadows, a lithe woman in matte gray armor, her pale silver eyes gleaming like knives in the dark. Her short black hair was swept back, and two thin blades hung at her hips like fangs. Lyra faced her. "He sent you to kill me." Leary smiled. "And the human. But you first. No speech about betrayal? About our history? We were never friends," Leary said. "You were always too soft." Lyra drew her blaster. Leary drew her blades. The corridor crackled with tension. Then everything exploded into motion. Lyra fired, but Leary moved fast, twisting, spinning, the blaster bolt grazing the wall behind her. She closed the distance in a flash, her blades singing through the air. Lyra ducked, rolled, and fired again. A lucky shot clipped Leary's shoulder, sending her skidding back. "I'm not that soft anymore," Lyra said, rising to her feet. But Leary just grinned, blood trickling from her arm. "Good. That means you'll last longer." Leary lunged again, her twin blades catching the dim corridor light as they slashed toward Lyra's midsection. Lyra dodged left, the first blade slicing through her jacket, the second missing by inches. She dropped to one knee and fired upward, but Leary twisted in midair, landing cat-like against the opposite wall. "You've improved," Leary said, circling. "But you're still fighting with your heart." Lyra raised her blaster again, but Leary kicked a crate into her path and vanished behind a column. "Funny," Lyra called out, moving slowly now, careful. "I thought you were the one still working for a ghost." Leary's voice echoed from the shadows. "Drake is no ghost. He's evolution. The future." Lyra took a breath. "Then why hide in the dark?" She caught the faintest flicker of motion to her right and fired. A scream followed, but not from Leary, just a scavenger who'd wandered into the wrong corridor. Lyra cursed under her breath. Leary was using the environment, just like she always had. The assassin was a predator, and Lyra was now her cornered prey. Until a voice crackled in her ear. "Back corridor, 90 meters. She's circling behind you," Elias said. He tapped into the port's passive sensors. Lyra smiled. "Thanks," she whispered and turned. Leary appeared behind her, a blade aimed at Lyra's spine. But Lyra was ready. She spun, grabbing Leary's wrist mid-swing, using the assassin's own momentum to hurl her into the wall. The impact cracked metal, and Leary's second blade clattered to the floor. Breathing hard, Lyra pointed her blaster at her. Leary rose slowly, wiping blood from her mouth. "You won't shoot me. Try me. You and I aren't that different," Leary sneered. "You followed orders. You betrayed people for data. The only difference is you fell for your mark." "I chose him," Lyra said, her voice ice. "You're still hiding behind Drake." She fired. Not to kill. But the bolt struck Leary's leg, sending her crashing to the ground. The assassin grunted in pain and looked up, stunned. "You're lucky I'm not who I used to be," Lyra muttered. "Tell Drake if he wants me, he can come himself." Footsteps echoed behind her, Elias, arriving just in time. Leary hissed as she dragged herself upright, leaning against the wall. "You'll regret this." Elias raised his blaster. "Not likely." But Lyra raised a hand. "Let her crawl back. Let him see we're not scared." Leary disappeared into the shadows, limping defeated, for now. Elias looked at Lyra stunned. "You could have ended it." Lyra holstered her blaster. "No. I just began it." The following morning, the Caldres Vega sky burned copper as both suns climbed above the jagged cliffs in the distance. The haze had returned, thick with dust and smoke from the industrial sectors, but it couldn't hide the tension that had settled like a storm front over the makeshift safehouse. Lyra sat at the terminal in the apartment's main room, her leg bandaged, her thoughts far away. The encounter with Leary had shaken her, not because she'd almost lost, but because it had confirmed the truth she'd been trying not to say aloud. Drake was no longer just cleaning up a mess. He was escalating. Elias entered, wearing a fresh shirt and a growing concern in his eyes. "You haven't slept." She shook her head. "Couldn't." He sat across from her. "I've been thinking. Drake's quiet. Too quiet. We embarrassed him, ruined his operation, but he's not retaliating like I expected. Sending Leary was subtle. He's watching," Lyra said. "Studying how we respond. Then we respond loudly." She looked at him. "Go public," Elias continued. "Not just files. Us. Faces. Voices. Tell the story ourselves. Let the galaxy see we're not hiding. You want to become symbols?" He shrugged. "Drake controls the shadows. But he can't operate in the light." Lyra considered it. "It's dangerous. So is staying silent." Before she could respond, Solon's voice came over the apartment's comm system, this time panicked and sharp. "Get to the roof. Now. We've got incoming." Lyra and Elias bolted from their chairs and rushed up the narrow stairwell to the rooftop access. The door hissed open, and the sun's glare hit them, along with the unmistakable low thrum of engines. 3 vessels hovered above the spaceport, sleek, black, angular. Not coalition. Not official. "These are new," Solon said, stepping beside them with binoculars. "No registries. No insignia. Not even transponder pings. Whoever's in those birds wants to stay hidden." Then the lead ship opened a broadcast channel. A voice filled the air, clear, deep, and familiar. "Lyra Voss. Elias Trent. You've had your moment. Now it's mine." Lyra's blood ran cold. "Drake. You ran. You bled. You screamed. And now the galaxy will watch you fall. Not as heroes, but as examples." The transmission ended. One of the ships released a payload, a small canister that dropped like a stone into the center of the port. It burst open midair. No explosion. No fire. Just a gray cloud that billowed and spread with unnatural speed. Gas. People below began coughing. Screaming. Collapsing. Lyra's eyes went wide. "No, it can't be." Elias stared. "Is that Ziritha's fever?" she whispered. "A weaponized strain. He's not trying to kill them. He's trying to prove it works." Lyra's breath caught in her throat as she watched the gray gas spread across the port below. People screamed and scattered, coughing violently, some collapsing where they stood. A cruel, targeted chaos. Elias turned to Solon, who was already on her comm. "Shut the vents. Seal every hatch to the upper levels now." "I'm on it," she barked, disappearing back inside. Lyra grabbed Elias's arm, her voice shaking. "That's not just fear gas. I recognize the cloud pattern. Drake's using a modified aerosol version of Ziritha's fever. He made it transmissible." Elias's face hardened. "Then he's crossed the line." He's not just trying to silence us. He's making a demonstration. They rushed back inside, sealing the rooftop door behind them. Sirens now blared across Caldras Vega, and emergency lockdown procedures activated across the port. Solon reappeared moments later. I isolated our air supply and sealed off every vent I could, she said. But that gas, it's designed to linger. If even one drop gets into the wind system, it'll spread across the planet in hours. Lyra leaned over the console, pulling up atmospheric controls. We have one chance. I can override the orbital purifiers. If we ignite the containment grid from the stratosphere, we can burn the pathogen out of the air. Solon blinked. You want to ignite the sky? Lyra met her eyes. Better a firestorm than a planet full of corpses. Elias was already moving. How do we reach the grid? There's a weather control tower 3 clicks from here, Solon said. Heavily guarded, but it has a direct uplink to the purification system. Lyra turned to Elias, and for a brief second, her hand found his. This ends today. They geared up, Lyra with her battered rifle, Elias strapping on scavenged armor, and Solon prepping the Wayfarer for a direct strike. The streets below were already war zones, civilians fleeing, med units overwhelmed. As they boarded the freighter, Solon looked back at the dying world. This bastard wants to write his name in blood. Elias's voice was steel. Then let's make sure he never gets the ink. The Wayfarer lifted into the smoke-filled sky, heading straight for the storm tower. Above them, Drake's 3 ships turned to intercept. And below, Caldras Vega held its breath. The sky over Caldras Vega had turned a sickly yellow-gray, choked with pathogen-rich gas. Fires burned in the outskirts of the port city as containment units struggled to manage the spreading sickness. Civilians huddled behind sealed doors, praying the fever wouldn't reach them. And overhead, the Wayfarer cut through the chaos like a blade. We're 10 clicks out from the tower, Solon called from the cockpit, banking hard to avoid an incoming missile. Drake's ships have locked on. We'll never make it unless we drop fast and dirty. Do it, Lyra said, already strapping herself into the side hatch's jump rig. Get us close enough. I'll go in from the roof. Elias grabbed her arm. You're not going alone. You're barely healed. Doesn't matter. Solon rolled her eyes as another blast rocked the hull. Fine. I'll keep them busy. But you've got one shot. Get into that tower, override the system, and torch the sky before it's too late. The ship dipped sharply, skimming the rooftops of the outer industrial blocks. Anti-air turrets from Drake's escort ships opened fire, but Solon dodged through the smoke and debris like a woman possessed. I'm opening the hatch, she shouted. Lyra and Elias stood side by side, harnesses clipped, gears strapped down. Below them, the weather control tower loomed, tall, ancient, scarred by neglect but still functional. Lyra turned to Elias. If this goes sideways, we finish it together, he said and jumped. She followed. They landed hard, rolling across the roof under a hail of metal and wind. Lyra was up first, firing at the 2 guards stationed on the upper balcony. One dropped. The other fled. They forced the access door open and descended into the tower's control center, dark, humming, and eerily empty. Someone's already here, Elias muttered. And then the lights flickered on. Kalen Drake stood at the far end of the control room, hands clasped behind his back, as calm as ever. I was beginning to wonder if you'd make it. Lyra raised her weapon. It's over, Drake. No, he said, stepping aside to reveal the override panel. It's just beginning. The Council ignored me. Humanity ignored me. But the virus will make them listen. You're insane. I'm inevitable. Elias stepped forward, his voice low. You used us. Manipulated Lyra. Murdered Pax. Now you're trying to prove a point by killing thousands. Drake smiled. No. I'm proving I was right. This galaxy needs a reason to unify. A reason to obey. Lyra fired. The bolt struck Drake's shoulder, spinning him backward into the control station. She rushed forward, slammed the override switch, and jammed her encoded key into the system. Purifier activation in 30 seconds, a voice intoned. No! Drake lunged, blood streaming from his arm. He tackled her into the console, trying to wrest the key free. Elias dove in, ripping Drake off her and slamming him into the wall. 15 seconds, the voice repeated. Drake drew a hidden blade and lunged again. Lyra shot him, this time, in the heart. Kalen Drake collapsed, blood pooling beneath him. 5 seconds. She yanked the key free and turned to Elias. Let's finish this. The control panel glowed white. And then the sky burned. From orbit, the spectacle was terrifying and beautiful. A web of fire ignited across Caldrus Vega's upper atmosphere, fueled by the purifier grid and superheated plasma channeled through the planetary weather network. The pathogen Drake had released, his ultimate proof of power, was burned away in a single blinding storm. The clouds turned gold, then white, then vanished. And with them, the sickness. Lyra and Elias stood on the tower's upper balcony, watching as the fire faded and sunlight pierced the clearing sky. The air was still, the ground below quiet. The people of Caldrus Vega had survived, barely. It's over, Elias said softly. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She looked at Drake's body below, still, cold, small now in death. A man who once wielded the power of life and death like a scepter, brought down by the very woman he'd underestimated. She holstered her weapon. It had to be. A crackle came over their comms. Solon. I'm seeing clean readings across the city. Toxins burned. Contagion gone. You two just saved an entire planet. Elias let out a long breath. I'll take that win. Lyra looked at him. We need to report to the council. Get the evidence. Make sure there's no cover-up. Already sent, Solon replied. The second the override triggered, I transmitted Drake's confessions, his plans, and the sensor logs. The galaxy knows. He's finished. They made their way back down the tower, where the Wayfarer waited in a burned-out landing field. Med teams were already swarming the lower levels of the city, helping the sick, patching wounds. The people of Caldrus Vega wouldn't forget what happened, but they'd survived it. As Lyra and Elias climbed aboard the freighter, Solon met them at the ramp with crossed arms. Well, she said, you two are now officially heroes. You'll be hunted by whoever backed Drake and worshipped by half the outer colonies. We'll lay low, Elias said. For a while. Lyra looked to the stars, then back to him. No. Not lay low. He raised an eyebrow. No? She stepped closer. We don't run. Not anymore. We tell the truth. We stand for something. Solon laughed. You want to be icons now? Just visible, Lyra said. She turned to Elias, her voice quieter. You gave me your blood. You risked your life. And you showed me what loyalty actually means. And you gave me a reason to fight again, Elias said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. To believe in something. Solon made a gagging noise behind them. If you two start kissing again, I swear I'll crash this ship into a moon. Lyra smirked and ignored her, pulling Elias in for one last kiss, this one soft, long, and full of unspoken promises. As the Wayfarer lifted into the sky, the smoke cleared beneath them, and a new dawn broke over Caldrus Vega. They were no longer fugitives. No longer pawns. They were survivors. Truthbringers. And the first to rise in a galaxy on the edge of something new.